we are back, and we just finished watching 1976's Logan's Run, rated PG with a runtime of 1 hour and 59 minutes. Didn't feel like a 2-hour film. This is directed by Michael Anderson from a novel by William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson. Screenplay credits to David Zelag Goodman, and stars Michael York as the titular Logan, a Sandman who is in charge or responsible for bringing in runners. They live in this utopian society where the age cutoff is 30, and once you hit 30, you go to Carousel, which is advertised as this rebirth place, but basically people are just incinerated.
Yeah, it's pretty much just like a shooting range.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's like pull, shoot, boom, you're dead.
Yes.
And then people politely applaud.
Exactly. And cheer.
Yeah.
You've seen this before, right?
I saw this a long time ago when I was a little boy on TV.
I believe I saw this in the theater, and I've seen it subsequently on TV. My brother, I think I told you, was a Sandman one year for Halloween. And you know what? The costume still holds up. I mean, it's black with like a gray stripe.
As costumes go for 70s characters, that would hold up today.
Yeah,
I don't know about the rest of those people's outfits.
Yes, no. It was like a toga
definitely
party,
not box. Toga. I don't think anybody's going to be box for Halloween because that was ridiculous. Was just garbage.
Yeah.
I heard this movie had a big budget for the time, but it certainly wasn't on box.
I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I feel like for 76, this was, I don't want to say revolutionary, but it was up there. And again, this is pre-Star Wars, because obviously as soon as Star Wars enters the chat, I mean, all bets are off.
Yeah, then you had like a dedicated special effects studio who were doing crazy work.
I mean, what is better than freaking Darth Vader?
Yeah.
I mean, that to this day, that is like one of the coolest supervillains ever. His whole entrance, his whole...
So ominous.
Yeah.
Big black shape.
Yeah.
And of course, the late, great James Earl Jones.
Voice, yes.
His voice.
Yeah. So on viewing this almost 50 years later, what do you think of the film?
This is one of those movies that could definitely be remade.
You know what? Absolutely. I agree with that. I think you said that after we finished watching the film.
It's got a good premise. It's got a good story, but I don't think the time period and I guess the sensibilities of that time period really do it justice.
Yeah.
I mean, their performances were fine, but it was still...
It lacked something.
Yeah, it had that 70s
je ne sais quoi to it.
Yeah.
So we caught this on the Turner app. It's going to go away in a couple of days, but you can also find this on Tubi for anyone that's interested, either as a newbie, your introduction into 70s sci-fi, or if you just want to go down memory lane. But I think that I agree with you 100%. This is definitely a property that's ripe for like a revamp. And one of the reasons I brought up watching it on the Turner app is because, as you know, I love the host intros. And
this had like several host intros.
Yes, it did. Wasn't that nuts? Yeah, and I watched all of them.
Even people that we've never seen were
before,
doing host intros.
So the reason I wanted to bring that up was because in all of the host intros, one of the main things is obviously this is based off an existing property, a novel. But one of the things that was changed, and I think a right call, because in the novel, the age cutoff is 21, which isn't a long time to be alive. But by 30, I guess you've grown into adulthood, kind of. So it made sense to kind of up that age a bit.
And they did it because they just wanted a larger pool of actors to work
which
with.
Also made sense. Yeah. I think obviously not winning any major Oscar or acting awards, Michael York is adequate here. I think he does a good job of being this kind of zealot in the beginning, but then kind of having this hero's journey where he comes to grips with the idea of the runners. He meets runners and his mindset is then changed because he comes to understand, like, why do we have to end life at 30?
Yeah.
So I think the switch from the novel to the movie made a lot of sense and really lends itself to the film and the pacing of the film. I didn't find this tedious watching it. I think it
wasn't tedious. It definitely moved.
It's kind of dated. The effects are kind of dated.
It's dated. The scene in the ice cave where everything starts falling apart.
Terrible.
Wow, those were some
really bad effects.
Low budget special effects.
Yeah.
It almost looked just like double exposure to the film with scenes from something else.
That took me out. That was kind of
that kind of knocked you out. I made fun of Box, but even he was light years ahead of that destruction of the cave.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, the Sandman's guns were kind of cool. They made little light effects, and it wasn't the cheesy boo boo with cheesy lights shooting by.
And just the story of like this society where basically the AI or the supercomputer that's kind of in charge is basically making these decisions that in order to preserve resources and whatnot, we're going to cap everyone at 30, right? So
once you hit 30, you're gone.
You're gone, right? But we're going to sell it as something else, obviously. Like, you'll be reborn.
You'll be reborn as a little baby.
Yes, you'll renew. So. That's why, so like Francis 7? So
yeah, they all had numbers for last
Logan
names.
5.
Logan 5, Francis 7.
Jessica 6.
So
yeah, so I guess that feeds into the mythos that you're being reborn. And in the beginning of the film, we see Logan seeing new Logan inhabiting.
Yeah, Logan 6.
6, right. And everyone has this gemstone thing on
embedded
their palm.
in their palm.
And that's how people know that they're getting close to the age of expiration, I guess. The more I think about it, the more I would love to see this remade. I would love to see the choices that are made. I think that they should stick to the 30 cutoff. I think that's kind of interesting because, again, that's an interesting age because you're sort of coming into your own. I think your 20s are just very chaotic. Well, a lot of life is chaotic, but you're kind of sort of finding yourself. Although maybe even more interesting to push it to 40 because I think when I reached 40, at least for me, I really felt like I had come into my own. I think even in my 30s, I was making
I think 30 is
dubious.
fine. In today's day and age, they could even roll it back to 21 because there's plenty of young actors and actresses who could fill these parts. Like they said, they upped the age to 30 specifically just so they can cast
a wider net
older actors and actresses. Because let's be honest, look at a 70s movie and hey, I'm 21. And it's just like, why is your hairline so receded? And
well, who would they have gotten in the 70s? Jackie or Haley or something? He was kind of big in the 70s.
I don't know.
But he was a child. Jodie Foster.
It's different now.
Yeah, I mean, Disney pumps out like a ton of young
talent. There is a factory
year.
That just shoots out young, talented performers.
Yearly, it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah. This movie is a precursor to all of those young adult dystopian
kind
dramas
of stories,
like Hunger Games and
Maze Runner
and all those other
the
ones.
100 or
the Divergent or whatever the hell, the 100. So many shows have been about, well, let's make a dystopia, but for some reason everybody is just young with flawless skin.
Yeah.
This is the precursor to that. Another thing I found kind of amusing, the city is near Washington, D.C. Why does Michael York have an English accent?
I don't know.
He's like one of the few people in this entire utopia
too, also
has an English accent.
As does, we didn't mention it, but Peter Ustinov also has an accent. Well, no, he actually downplays it because he's British,
he just sounded like an old
man.
An old man, like, yeah. He almost sounded Winnie the Pooh-ish.
So, fun fact, we did a little bit of a deep dive. Not too much because we kind of wanted to come into this review fresh, but we found out that in the novel, Francis is actually like a double agent, and
Francis is helping people get to
Sanctuary. Right. But in the film, there was a decision made where Francis is strictly a Sandman, and the Ballard character is the Peter Ustinov character. Yeah. So I thought that was also an interesting divergence from the novel to the movie, and it made sense to me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, given that you're dealing with a shorter amount of time, and Yeah, it's
And
sort
it
of.
just,
Plus,
for
you
the
need you
story
need
to move along. I think it makes
plus,
sense.
I mean, plus you need like an antagonist.
Sure.
And that was probably one of the other things that I found a little bit of a flaw with it. Is it's like, yeah, there's an antagonist. It didn't really make sense to me why he was so invested in bringing in Logan and Jessica to the point where it was
he
like
almost loses his. Well, he does lose his mind.
He practically loses his mind, and also just the way he pursued them, it just didn't seem possible to me.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell they took an elevator up to get to the ice cave? How the hell did he get there? There's no.
Maybe the elevator came back down. They went through.
They swam through water, and somehow he still tracks them down. And it's not like as though he's like, oh, I'm gonna smell them or look, oh, the branches. But they lived in a utopian city. Were there even any plants?
I don't remember.
There's no way that he knows how to track people unless it's like, oh, I see his footprint in the carpet.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense how he was able to follow them. And also then at the end, this is why I say it's also ripe for a remake, because that fight scene at the end was just
awful.
Yeah.
No budget there.
No budget. No
fight choreography.
No fight choreography. And it was just sort of like, I'm going to hit you with this stick.
You're dead. Yeah. It was very anticlimactic, especially since he had expended all this energy and time to tracking Logan and Jessica down. I think that part of Francis's mania came from this sort of mind blown, because here he's being presented with an idea that doesn't corroborate the things that he believes. The thing that he believes is that the algorithm or whatever, the supercomputer, does things for the good of society. And at 30, you go to Carousel and you are on the path to be reborn into your next life.
That was another thing that was sort of interesting about Francis, was I don't know if he really believed in the whole reborn thing, because he even says that. Well, he even says, he's like, I don't go, I don't really care. It was like, for him, it was just, I'm going to do my job. When my job is done, I'm going to have lots of sex and do drugs, and that's it. I don't think he cared about that part of the system at all, about replenishing resources and whatnot. To him,
I
it
don't
was
think
just.
he cared about that, but I do think he drank the Kool-Aid as far as once you're 30.
No. He was adamant. Yeah.
He very much hated runners.
Oh, he was completely adamant about that.
Yeah.
But I think to him, it was more like, I like my job. I like killing people and having fun.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And as far as like, we're doing this to maintain the order, I don't think he gave two shits about that.
I don't think that was ever revealed. I think we've just read about it, and I think that that's part of what's implied in the novel. I don't think that was ever information disseminated to the general public in the story. I think that's just something that we gather.
He has an entire discussion with Logan about it, or Logan has a discussion with him about it. Right after they visit Logan 6 and the thing, they're walking through the thing, and their discussion ends when that guy bumps into them.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, that guy's gonna run."
Yeah.
So for me, it just adds to the fact that I don't know, the way he was built up, I don't think he would care, especially that Logan was running to the point where he would be like manic about hunting him down. I think it would just sort of be like, all right, I'll just kill somebody else.
I disagree, and I'm going to tell you why. Because one of the things that comes up first is when Logan runs with Jessica and they go into like that underground, and they're like, there's those people with the spears with the lights at the end of them before all the other Sandman come. They basically say, you're a Sandman. Sandmen don't run. So I think that's part of sort of the thing that cracks Francis's head. The idea that his friend that he knows, that he breaks bread with, who he considers like a brother, that Logan would run, is just so foreign to him. And when he does catch up with Logan and Jessica, he doesn't want to do harm to Logan. He just wants to bring him in. But he desperately wants Logan to extinguish Jessica, because I think that he's secretly upset, because I think, and again, this is just my interpretation, I think Francis is upset that Jessica has taken Logan away from him and put him on this alternate path. I think as much as Francis is like this ne'er-do-well, crazy, drug-addicted, well, maybe not even drug-addicted, but very hedonistic personality, I think he very much believes in order. I think he very much believes in rules. And I think he very much believes in consequences. And even though he exhibits this other behavior, there's something deep within him that you have to follow the rules. He doesn't outwardly come out as a rebel, but I think internally there is this firm grasp on belief, almost to the point of zealotry. And I think that that's why he is so focused on this idea that runners need to be exterminated because they're going against what is the norm. So he sort of represents the idea of keeping youth down in a way. And Logan, you mentioned it before, the scene in the beginning when they're looking at the baby. Logan comes off as this guy who asks questions, who's naturally curious, who wants to know the why of things. When he's in that room going through his, like, not interrogation, but I guess like report with the computer or whatever. And then the computer was like, do you know what this symbol is? Which is the Ankh. And he didn't know anything. He didn't know what sanctuary was. He didn't know what the Ankh meant. But then the computer assigns him this assignment. And you come to find out that he had, I think, like 6 years left or 4 years left before he's supposed to go to Carousel. But the computer changes the gem on his hand so that he is now 30. And he even says, do I get my time back? But the computer is just like, we're done here. Yeah. We're done here. So I think that even the computer understood the threat it faced and the way of life faced when you had people like Logan now questioning, like, why is this done this way? What does this mean? He was a good Sandman. He did his job, but at the same time, he wasn't 100% on board. There's that scene where they're running and they run into that dark-haired woman who's outside. And he spares her, but then Francis kills her. So I think it's interesting because it's like the juxtaposition, the law and order, but then you have the subversion, which is what Logan represents. Because even though he is a law-abiding Sandman, he also questions, why are things done this way?
You kind of went off on a tangent about, we were talking about Francis and his obsession
kind of
with Logan. And the thing you said that made sense to me was, yeah, I could see Francis losing his mind over the fact that this girl was taken away as his best buddy.
Right.
So that I can understand making sense. I didn't see Logan as a guy who questioned anything.
I think he did.
Not really. He went along with it, and it wasn't until he was basically betrayed by the computer.
No, but he has questions when they're talking to Francis. He's like, well, and then even Francis gets annoyed. He's like, what is it with you and all these questions?
He was annoyed because he kept talking about what you don't believe that you get regenerated. Mm-hmm. And Francis didn't care. Right,
but the fact that Logan is even on this intellectual excursion.
He did pose that hypothetical, but he was also very much a true believer in that, yes, you do. You go to Carousel, you get reborn.
I think initially he did believe that, but after his interaction with the computer...
After his interaction with the computer...
He starts to have doubts.
But my issue is he only has those doubts because now he is being forced to run. And he's being forced to run under the
guise of this assignment.
The guise that you are going to infiltrate Sanctuary and kill everybody there.
Right.
And he's like, okay, when I do that, do I get my time back?
Yeah.
And the machine was basically just like,
we're done.
We're done.
Yeah.
You could leave now.
Right.
And at that point, he starts to understand, I think I'm fucked over here, man.
Yeah.
This is bad. I'm going to get screwed.
Right.
And that's when he's like, I guess I better run.
Right.
I guess I better actually run because there's the point after the whole thing with they meet all the people with the spears. Mm-hmm. He's in it. He's in it 100%.
Yeah. He needs to get to Sanctuary.
He's with Jenny. The Sandmen come out of nowhere. Everybody's getting killed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he murdered several Sandmen by that point. So he's got to run.
Right, right.
And the machine, and he knows the machine ain't going to back him up.
Right.
But I don't believe that, like, if the machine never approached him, if the machine never said, I want you to investigate and infiltrate Sanctuary, he would have done his 6 years and then happily went to Carousel.
Yeah, because that was what is expected of him.
Shot while floating around. They could have made Carousel a bit better. Like,
and then they
like
how those
they get those hockey masks and the onesies
and the robe, and it was
and it's just sort of like, people are watching this. You got to make it look good for the people, in the crowd. Because if I had to go to this every evening, and it's just like, what are we doing tonight? Oh, we got to go to Carousel again. And you just see
people
floating around, and then just suddenly, and they get blown up or shot. They're not even getting blown up. It's just like this spark. Laser, it's like they're shooting fireworks at them or something. That's lame. Show me something amazing, like they ascend into light or something that looks joyous or whatever. I mean, I guess in the book they said that it's sort of like a gas chamber, but it's just like some sort of pleasure gas. And they're just like, ooh, this feels awesome, and then they're dead. That's better than freaking floating around in a hockey mask until you're shot. Why would anybody? Everybody should run at that point.
Yes.
It's like, wait a minute, I have to give up the crazy hedonistic lifestyle to get shot like an air fryer or whatever the hell that thing is.
I also wonder, like, this couldn't be the only population in the Earth. You think? I don't know.
I mean, as far as this story was, that was the one spot, but I mean,
then you had,
honestly, they could make, like I said, this property is kind of ripe for exploration, getting rebooted.
Yeah.
Because it's a good...
bones of it are really good.
The bones of it are good.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they've done it with others. They did it with Westworld.
Yeah.
This could totally fit in that mold. I could totally see Logan's Run being some sort of, like, prestige drama on HBO. Or a movie or a series of movies.
Mm.
It hits those buttons. I mean, like I said, all of these young adult dystopian novels, I mean, that was big for a while.
Yeah.
And even now,
it's not
it's not as prevalent as like Hunger Games when that came out. But people still like seeing young people running around and killing each other. Battle Royale,
being hunted.
Yeah.
What do you think of the idea of this kind of cutoff age? We've seen it in other things, but here it's kind of interesting because 30 is young. I mean, usually it's older than that, I feel like. There was that movie I saw for film discussion. I don't know, it was Asian. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name, where it was like 75. And then at 75, you sort of kind of let go. But there was this woman who decided, no, that's not what I'm doing. And she kind of goes off into like the wilderness or whatever. But what do you think of those kind of stories where
at a certain age you have to be killed? Or that's just another aspect of like of dystopias. Mm-hmm. There's always something terrible, and in this it made sense because you're living in this contained dome of the city. So this is your choice. We only have this amount of resources. It's like, do you remember Snowpiercer?
Right.
The train, it was, everything is balanced.
Right.
We can't have people just willy-nilly moving from car to car because we have this amount of food, this amount of waste is produced. From this waste, we can make this amount of resources, and that's it. Right. You're not allowed to have kids unless we tell you you can have kids. You know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, unless you were super rich, you probably didn't get to live as long as you'd have liked.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people in the back of the train were just getting killed at a certain age.
Yeah. Or, expendable.
Yeah. So it makes sense in that sort of model. Mm-hmm. It also makes sense in the whole concept of, well, maybe it doesn't have to be this way. How do we know what's outside is all poison and death? And,
right.
I think there's a show now called Silo on Apple TV that Apple TV. There's apparently a ton of shows on Apple TV that nobody knows they even freaking exist. Why do they even have a streaming service?
I mean, I think some people do. I mean,
some people do. They must, because it's
we've
like
heard about Severance and Foundation.
It's like there's 4 seasons of the show, and people are like, what? The hell are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, I think Apple is still kind of a fairly new streamer, right? So it's not as
At least
prolific.
4 years now.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not going to have as much content as say like a Disney or a Netflix or even a Max, right?
I mean,
because
advertise it or something. Jesus.
yeah,
I don't see any. I don't see
they're
any.
not hurting. You know what I mean?
They're not hurt. They're not hurting. But
it's cash.
You know,
otherwise they wouldn't be able to make these shows and acquire these movies.
The only time I hear about these shows is when somebody's like, "Hey, on this show," and somebody's like, "What is that?" And they're like, "Oh, it's Apple, and they have shows. Yeah, they have this show, this show, this show, and this show." And you're just those all sound really interesting. I would like to see them.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, you just got to subscribe to Apple Plus. Fuck that.
Yeah, if I was gonna add a streamer, it would totally be Shudder. Yeah. Good
cheesy horror.
Yes, all day, every day. All right. I feel like we've discussed this movie enough.
Yeah.
Scale of 1 to 10, what would you say?
I'd give it a 6.
A 6, only a 6. Okay, fair enough.
Like I said, it's something that I feel the concept of was beyond what the 70s could handle in a decent way.
Right. I think we've progressed as far as effects and stuff.
The little miniatures were really cool.
Yeah.
I like the little monorails and dome cities and all that stuff looked neat, but you could totally tell.
Model, yeah.
You could totally tell they were toys.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
like watching an old Godzilla movie. The computer designs. For what purpose would you have just like a giant wall with like multicolored Christmas stars? And there's this. It was like the 70s concept of what the future would be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure from what we've read, the screenplay definitely strays from the original source materials, but I'm sure a lot of the stuff, obviously, it's from the novel, so I'm sure some of the things translated from the novel into the movie. So you're going by 70s realness, right? What is available at the time. The movie looks...
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You know?
It's that's why I feel this could be done a lot better.
It's
not like as though... And it's not like as though Logan's Run has this sort of like
pedigree,
cherished place in the hearts of millions.
Yeah, no.
Where you're like, how dare you remake it? Like people got upset when they remade Willy Wonka.
Right. Because
Willy Wonka is an absolute classic.
Yeah. But the new one wasn't bad.
I'm not talking about Wonka with Timothy Chalamet. I'm talking about the Tim Burton one.
That was awful. Never mind.
Which was garbage.
Yeah.
There are certain things that you just don't touch, and then there's Logan's Run. Krull. I keep saying Krull. Krull would be
absolutely right for
excellently
a reboot.
done for a reboot.
Yeah, agreed. Time Bandits, another Apple show that nobody heard about.
Time Bandits is perfect. You don't mess with Time Bandits, and Apple
yet,
and
yet we have.
You know what? That's why I remembered all this Apple TV crap, was because that show just got canceled.
Did it?
Didn't last the season.
Wow.
And big complaint was it was just like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
This isn't Time
Bandits.
Also,
the Disney Plus remake of Willow didn't do well, I guess, right? Because I don't think that lasted a season either.
That didn't do well, but honestly, Willow wasn't one of those properties that was near and dear to anybody's heart. And it wasn't like a reboot. They did like a continuing story.
Yeah.
And I think people just didn't
care for it.
Didn't get into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched...
Oh, did you?
I watched like 3/4 of it, I think, and then I just kind of got tired.
Yeah, I never invested the time.
Yeah. They had some nice designs. They had some decent special effects, but I don't know, the story just kind of...
Yeah.
There was also annoying characters. I hate when it's like...
I can see that.
Yeah.
I didn't have any faith in the Time Bandit reboot.
I saw the trailer for it, and I was just... It's like, what the hell? Why is Phoebe calling herself a time bandit? Yeah. They never called themselves time bandits in the
movie. Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not even saying Phoebe as in, because I can't remember Lisa Kudrow's name. No, I know it's Lisa Kudrow. She's playing goddamn Phoebe again.
Yeah. All right. So you give it a 6. I'm going to give this, obviously I'm going to go higher only because of the nostalgia, because I love this movie. It has a special place in my heart. I'm going to give this an 8, actually.
Wow, you're generous.
I'm very generous. And I know that. It probably is a 7, but I'm going to give it an 8 because, like I said, it holds a special place in my heart.
All
right. So you gave it a 6. I give it an 8. I think it's still over the 5. So I think if you can catch it, it's currently playing on the TCM app, but If you miss it, I think it's going away in a couple of days. Check it out on Tubi. And with that, we will bid you all a
Good night.
good night.